The CEO laughed when he fired the quiet mechanic for being too slow. He had no idea that in 72 hours, a Navy helicopter would land outside calling for a man whose codename once made terrorists surrender without a fight. Brandon Mitchell stood in his glass office at Premier Auto, watching the old mechanic below struggle with a transmission. Jack Rivera moved deliberately, methodically, like every bolt mattered. To Brandon, he just looked slow, inefficient, a dinosaur in a world that demanded speed. "Rivera, my office." Now, Jack climbed the stairs, wiping oil from his hands. He was 56, silver-haired, with scars on his knuckles that Brandon had never bothered to ask about. "You're done," Brandon said, not even offering a seat. "Your numbers are down. We need faster techs." Jack didn't argue, didn't beg. He simply nodded once, that infuriating calm never breaking. "Understood, that's it. No fight." Would it change anything? No. "Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I love hearing from you." Jack packed his toolbox in silence. 22 years at this shop, gone in 20 minutes. His co-workers watched, stunned. Tony, the youngest mechanic, started forward. "Boss, this is quiet." Brandon snapped from above. "Get back to work." Jack shook Tony's hand. "It's okay, kid. Some things aren't worth the fight." He walked out carrying everything he owned into boxes, and Brandon felt nothing but satisfaction. Problem solved. Weak link removed. He'd saved the company $12,000 a year. He had no idea what he'd just done. Jack drove home through afternoon traffic. His daughter's voice on the phone. "Dad, you got fired. Why didn't you fight back?" "Because some battles don't matter, Maya," he said quietly. Maya was 23, fierce, studying law. She didn't understand why her father always chose silence over confrontation. She didn't know what he'd left behind when her mother died 7 years ago. The missions, the classified operations, the life where silence meant survival and pride got people killed. After the funeral, Jack had made a choice. No more deployments, no more nights wondering if he'd see Maya graduate. Just engines, predictability, and the peace of problems solved, with wrenches instead of weapons. He'd buried Captain Jack "Ghost" Rivera, Navy SEAL, and become just Jack, just a mechanic, just a dad. But the past doesn't stay buried forever. 3 days later, Brandon was reviewing reports when the sound began. Deep, rhythmic, growing louder. The windows vibrated. His coffee rippled. Then his secretary burst in, face pale. "There's a helicopter landing in our lot." Brandon rushed to the window and felt his world tilt. A Black Hawk was descending, rotors whipping debris into spirals. Employees poured outside. Cars rocked. The air itself seemed to shatter under the weight of something massive and unstoppable. The helicopter touched down with surgical precision. The rotors slowed. The door opened. 3 officers emerged, moving with the synchronized purpose of people who'd trained together for years. The lead officer was a colonel, his uniform crisp, his bearing absolute. He scanned the crowd until his eyes locked on Brandon. "I'm looking for Jack Rivera," he called out. "Captain Jack Rivera. Call sign Ghost." The words detonated. "Captain, Ghost, SEAL." Tony's wrench hit the concrete. Someone gasped. Brandon felt ice flood his veins. You fired him," Tony stammered. 3 days ago." The colonel's expression hardened. He pulled out a phone, made a call. Minutes later, Jack's old pickup appeared. He'd been at the hardware store, buying paint from Maya's apartment, living the quiet life he'd fought so hard to protect. Jack stepped out and froze when he saw the helicopter. For one moment, his mask slipped, not fear, recognition. The look of a soldier being called back to war. The colonel approached and saluted sharply. After a heartbeat, Jack returned it, muscle memory taking over. His shoulders squared, his spine straightened. Years fell away, replaced by someone else entirely. Someone dangerous and capable and absolutely certain. "Captain Rivera," the colonel said, "we have a situation. Hostage crisis. 18 Americans, including 6 children, taken by a cartel in Colombia. 2 extraction teams failed. The director personally requested you. They're asking for Ghost." The crowd had grown. Shop owners, neighbors, everyone watching the quiet mechanic transform into someone else. Someone whose nickname suddenly made terrifying sense. Ghost. The one who appeared when hope was gone. Jack's jaw clenched. He looked at the helicopter, at the colonel, at Brandon, who was finally seeing what he'd missed: the discipline, the scars, the weight of a man who'd carried missions that would never make the news. "I'm retired, Colonel." "I know, but there's a family from Texas. Parents are teachers, 3 kids, ages 5, 7, and 9. The youngest has asthma. Without medication, she has maybe 48 hours. Command is out of options, Captain. You're the last call." Jack closed his eyes. In that moment was every reason he'd left. Maya's childhood he'd missed. The nightmares that still woke him at 3 a.m. His wife's final words: "Promise me you'll stay." For Maya, but also every reason he'd served. The families who went home because he'd been willing to walk into hell. The kids who grew up because he'd made impossible decisions in darkness. He opened his eyes. "I need current intel. Satellite imagery, cartel profiles, terrain analysis, extraction windows." "Already on board, sir." Maya's car skidded into the lot. She'd seen it on social media. The video already viral. She ran to him, tears streaming, but smiling too. That complicated pride that comes from loving someone who runs toward danger. "Dad, I'll come back," he promised, holding her tight. "I always do, I know. Go save them." The helicopter lifted off, and Brandon stood surrounded by people who wouldn't meet his eyes. Tony finally spoke, his voice quiet but cutting. "You fired a hero because a spreadsheet said so. You never asked about his scars, never wondered why he worked alone. You saw numbers instead of a man, and now he's saving lives while you're standing here with your reports." The truth crushed Brandon. He'd judged without understanding, mistaken quiet strength for weakness, seen mediocrity where there was only exhaustion from carrying invisible wars. 9 days later, the news broke everywhere. 18 hostages rescued in an operation analysts called flawless. 0 casualties. The tactical plan came from a retired SEAL captain, pulled from civilian life, whose strategies had threaded an impossible needle. Jack Rivera came home to a city that finally understood what it meant when heroes chose to be ordinary. He didn't return to Premier Auto. He opened his own shop instead, small and independent, where he fixed engines and occasionally took calls from people with security clearances. Maya helped paint the sign, "Rivera's Garage," honest work, honorable service. Brandon resigned quietly, his reputation destroyed, learning too late that real leadership means seeing the value in people that numbers never capture. Because courage doesn't always wear medals. Sometimes it wears grease-stained coveralls and chooses silence over recognition. And sometimes the man you underestimate is the one who's been saving the world while you counted pennies. If this moved you, comment below and tell me what you think. And if you believe heroes walk among us in disguise, hit subscribe, because every week I bring you stories of hidden courage and quiet strength. See you next time.